Welcome everyone to the 31st Celebrity Synastry chart reading where I will be looking into Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Adeline. I look at the dynamic between two celebrities using astrology, specifically Synastry. For those new and returning, I take notes on a Synastry chart looking at the personal planets, signs, aspects, and if birth times available house overlays. I share these notes and add my extra insights and interpretations along the way. And of course, as always, leave your thoughts in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. So if that sounds good to you, like, subscribe, and keep on watching. Starting off with the sun, we have Ashton's sun in Aquarius and Mila's sun in Leo. These are polarity sister signs and also fixed signs. There's significant differences. Ashton is drawn to Mila's warmth. Mila is drawn to Ashton's intelligence. They benefit from each other's attitudes and insight. Mila thinks Ashton should put more effort in here. Ashton's sun in Mila's second house. Marriage is not possible. I believe they are married. Mila is a valuable asset to Ashton. Mila may feel used and senses that Ashton wants something more. Both may be working towards a common goal, and Ashton sees Mila as someone who can help him achieve his goals. Interesting. Mila's sun in Ashton's fourth house. There's a sense of familiarity. Ashton trusts Mila deeply. There's a strong desire to live together. Ashton feels secure around Mila. Yes, so far he seems to really trust her and view her as like a secure person to be around. Mila feels they belong together. Mila is very protective of Ashton and they are both committed to each other. Their suns are opposite each other, so the potential to complement each other. I do see that. I mean, so far we haven't seen any opposite dynamics, but, you know, they do seem to be quite complementary to each other. So far with what we're seeing, there's potential for that. They're intrigued by each other. Arguments are related to the individual ego. Opposites attract. They need to learn how to accept the differences of each other. Mila's sun opposite Ashton's moon. Stronger mutual attraction. Their differences attract them. Okay, so very much the whole opposites attract thing. They're very into that. Both are drawn to their relationship, but we did see that in the beginning. They are both drawn to each other for their own different reasons. Ashton may find Mila overbearing. We saw this, like, she finds him very protective, so I assume in that way he feels she's a bit too overprotective, possibly. Mila may find Ashton too dependent. I assume this is relating to how she can feel a bit used in the relationship. He really values her as a person. Mila's sun opposite Ashton's Venus. Their values conflict, they frustrate each other. Ashton grows to resent Mila. From what we're seeing so far, it just seems to be from Mila's overbearing nature. Ashton sees Mila as too dictatorial. Ashton needs to learn to accept Mila. We did see before they need to learn to accept each other, so more so from Ashton's ends, I guess. Hard work is needed to make this work. Ashton can play games with Mila. Mila will either not appreciate Ashton or take him for granted. Thus far, we haven't really seen anything. Mila's sun conjunct Ashton's Saturn. Mila is resentful of Ashton. They need to make time for fun. They can overcome obstacles together and they are able to depend on each other, which we did see in beginning, mostly from Ashton being able to really depend on, or feels he can depend on Mila because he views her as a very secure person. Relationship strengthens over the years. I hope this is like an opposite of a deteriorating relationship like the ones we've seen. It's the opposite. Like in the beginning it's bad, but over the years it strengthens. Both feel they can have a stable relationship. We definitely saw that from Ashton's end. Ashton needs to learn to stop being so critical. Ashton can be threatened by Mila's individuality. Interesting. We did see that she finds him a bit too dependent, so he possibly does depend on her a lot and doesn't like it when she goes off her own. Needs a bit more independent. Ashton has a tendency to repress Mila. Mila's vitality diminishes after being with Ashton, and Mila needs to learn to not be so sensitive to criticism. Ashton's sun square Mila's Uranus. It's not predictable or stable. Separation occurs and causes strain. So I assume because we haven't really seen much about no stability, from what we've seen thus far, it seems to lean more towards the stability factor. So I assume, you know, the separation would cause that lack of predictability and lack of stability, particularly with their careers, as always. Ashton feels trapped by Mila over time. I want to see if we're going to get a bit more with where he leans towards, because so far we've seen a lot of he very much depends on Mila. It would be, like, I would have thought this would be Mila feels a bit trapped, but maybe we'll see a bit more. He could just be confused. Mila grows tired of Ashton's inconsistency. Relationship can start and end suddenly. I know, like, with this relationship, we do kind of have to consider, I believe when they were super young, they were on that TV show together, and then years later, they actually had a relationship and got married. I assume that would be an element in this relationship, potentially, when the show finished, they suddenly ended, and then suddenly picked up again years later. I assume that's what this would be referring to. They cannot rely on each other in the long term. Ashton changes and challenges Mila's life, and Mila initially finds Ashton attractive and appealing. I don't like how we're seeing a bit more deteriorating aspects. I don't like that. Mila's sun, Trine Ashton's Neptune. It's tolerant and forgiving. Mila strengthens Ashton's ego, which is interesting because we saw how the arguments tend to lead more towards their egos rather than anything else. Attuned to each other's feelings, and Ashton inspires Mila to be creative. So now it's time for moon. So we have Ashton's moon in Aquarius and Mila's moon in Scorpio. These are both fixed signs. There's likely conflict. I'm not entirely surprised. There is a bit of tension here, isn't there? Mila finds Ashton shallow, hard to get over their differences, which the difference factor seems to be a big part of the relationship. You know, we mostly in the beginning, like right in the beginning, we did see like they're attracted to the differences, it's opposite attracts. But then again, like they don't seem to want to get over the differences. That's what seems to draw them to each other. Ashton is indifferent to Mila's feelings. This is random, just came to my head. But like with the whole from what we've seen so far from Ashton, like we've seen he's a bit dependent, and thus far, maybe we'll see a bit more. But thus far he seems to be quite conflicting. But there is also that conflict, like we did see a couple notes where he feels a bit threatened by Mila, like wants to have his own space from Mila. And Mila is quite overprotective and overbearing, of Ashton, and there's that whole thing of he views her as a bit dictatorial. That's another thing, like he seems to attach to her, but also she's a bit overbearing, like that sort of thing. My point is, with this whole thing with him being indifferent to Mila's feelings, so thus far, I hope this changes. It does seem to be like a bit of a parent-child dynamic. It does feel like a bit Ashton is like a bit of a kid in this relationship, and Mila kind of feels responsible for him, and I hope that changes, but just wanted to point that out. That came to my head. Ashton's moon in Mila's second house. Ashton values Mila as a source of emotional satisfaction. Mila may feel unsure about Ashton, I'm not surprised. Mila may become possessive of Ashton. Okay, there seems to be a real element for Mila to be a bit over Ashton. Both see each other as valuable, and it's a practical relationship. Mila's moon in Ashton's 6th house. Mila has conflicting feelings about Ashton. I don't like how we keep seeing this. She's very conflicted about this, and it's just, yeah. Both are too helpful to each other, can be beneficial if working towards a mutual goal, and it's easy to create a resentful relationship. I'm not surprised. It's not that great, is it? I think we did see a bit earlier they feel they can have a stable relationship, which I feel like it makes a lot of sense that they both feel like they can have it. Like in the beginning, particularly on Ashton's end, he does seem to view Mila as very secure and stable. I don't think we've seen anything from Mila's end so far about this stability, but if they both can just feel they can have a stable relationship, that could be potentially like a gluing factor when they can't really have that, can they? Ashton's moon, Trine Mila's Pluto. Intense meeting. They both will need to let go of fake personas. Both bring truth and change in social and political areas together. That's nice. Strong bond. With what we're seeing so far, would have to be involved in organizations together. They can solve problems in their community. They can go through difficulties together. We have seen this a couple times. They can both transform each other. Mila's moon is square Ashton's Mercury. Emotionally challenging. I feel like particularly from Mila's end with what we've seen thus far with their emotional relationship. It was that Ashton's not really in tune with Mila's emotions, or doesn't particularly care for emotions, but he sees her as a source of emotional satisfaction, which isn't great. Mila has a hard time getting Ashton to listen. I don't like this dynamic. It feels like Ashton's like a little baby here. He's a kid. Mila feels that Ashton does not value her opinions or respect her intellectually, which in the beginning we saw that Mila likes Ashton's or appreciates Ashton's intellectual side, not Ashton appreciating Mila's. Ashton feels Mila is sensitive to criticism. This seems to be becoming an element because we saw Mila needs to learn to not be so sensitive. So they both need to learn to listen, and Ashton feels frustrated with Mila. Mila's moon conjunct Ashton's Uranus, instant attraction, unpredictability makes the long term difficult. See, we keep seeing a lot of deteriorating factors, which isn't great. But we do see a lot of gluing factors together that not necessarily related to longevity, but like they can go through difficulties together. They're attracted to the differences and whatnot. Ashton is dominant, exciting meeting. They share an unusual lifestyle. I'm not sure if there's anything particularly unusual about their lifestyle besides they are in the public eye. Friends play a part in the meeting. Mila sees Ashton as unreliable. That kind of does check out. Like, he views her as very stable, reliable. And it makes sense that Mila would see Ashton as that way because he doesn't seem to be giving off any stable, energy here. Mila creates an accepting atmosphere for Ashton, and Ashton brings excitement to Mila. So now we're into Mercury. We have Ashton's Mercury in Aquarius and Mila's Mercury in Virgo. Mila gets impatient with Ashton. We kind of see again. Mila teaches Ashton to be more practical. Ashton teaches Mila to be more open-minded. So I assume this is like these are the sort of type parts in the reading where we are seeing this sort of complementary factor fundamentally communicate the same way. I mean, besides them getting into the tendency to argue frequently, mostly about their ego, we haven't seen anything concerning about their communication. Ashton's Mercury in Mila's second house. Difficult to see eye to eye together, I'm not surprised. They lack common views. We did see they do, like socially and politically, they do seem to agree, so maybe in other ways they don't really agree. Both get the impression that the other doesn't get them. I'm not really surprised. I would too. Mila's Mercury in Ashton's fourth house. Ashton's emotions are sensitive to Mila's words. From what we're getting so far, I feel like, I'm assuming, hopefully we'll see a bit more in the future, but Ashton does seem to be a bit more, he doesn't seem to have the emotional capacity to really help Mila. Ashton can predict what Mila will say. Ashton is comfortable with Mila and they both fit well in each other's lives. Which I honestly do kind of see. Like, we saw they both have the desire to live together and they share an unusual lifestyle, so that's there. Ashton's Mercury opposite Mila's Mars. They likely bicker a lot, not surprisingly so. Ashton feels his intelligence is threatened by Mila. Do these two not respect each other intellectually? That's not great. Ashton's thoughts may rub Mila the wrong way. Potentially this is where she is sensitive. Mila wants Ashton to be more docile. Mila frequently interrupts. Mila tries to force her opinion onto Ashton. I feel like they're parts in the relationship. Mila does seriously, she feels like a bit of a mother. She seriously feels like a bit of a mother. She's like a stable, secure person. She tries to force her opinion onto Ashton, and she has a bit of like conflicting feelings with his attachment, which lean towards like more motherly characteristics. And then you have Ashton. He's also conflicted with like his attachment and detachment. And it's sort of like he seems to be very reliant on Mila, like emotionally so as well. Like he doesn't seem to have the emotional capacity to sort of like take on her feelings, which is very much like parent-child dynamic, which I don't like. I really want to see more things to prove otherwise and change my mind. Difficult to live together. I assume this would just be like with their personalities, like, because we saw they have like the ability and the desire at least to live together, but I assume just with like them as people and their relationship. Ashton's Mercury, Sextile Mila's Jupiter. Mila appreciates Ashton's thoughts and ideas, I'm glad, but I also assume this will be relating to her conflicting feelings if she goes back and forth between respecting him and not in an intellectual manner. Open communication, there's a strong friendship. Mila often gives Ashton the benefit of the doubt, another sort of gluey, forgiving or softening factor. Enjoy traveling together, business together is beneficial. There's an optimistic meeting. They love to laugh together and they intellectually stimulate each other. Interesting. I feel like this would be the differences attracting each other seems to be a big part of this relationship, because like they don't seem to like really respect each other intellectually or really value each other, but they are feeling conflicted. I assume because, they're kind of attracted to that difference, but also at the same time, they don't necessarily agree with that genuinely. I assume that's how they would intellectually stimulate each other, this whole opposite different dynamic. Ashton's Mercury square Mila's Saturn. Deep respect for the other's intelligence. Ashton feels inferior to Mila. I'm not really surprised. She does seem to hold the power. Ashton can be intimidated by Mila's practicality. We see again. Series turning conversation. Negativity and criticism take over conversation. I'm not surprised. There does seem to be tension. Both question their role in the relationship. I would too. This is... Ashton's Mercury sextile Mila's Uranus. Attract opportunities as a couple. There does seem to be that dynamic. We do keep seeing, like, you know, business together would be beneficial. They are a good sort of, like, business match and the humanitarian match. They're perceptive and intuitive of each other. Ashton finds Mila intellectually stimulating. So I'm glad we're starting to lean towards more this side. So I assume they would be more, because, like, both of them have shown, like, they're feeling conflicted about each other. I hope, like, it does seem to be more leaning towards they respect each other intellectually. I hope they just infrequently don't respect each other in that way. Open communication and they encourage each other's visions. Mila's Mercury sextile Ashton's Uranus, so this is a repeated aspect, just inverted. So Mila finds Ashton intellectually stimulating. Mila's Mercury square Ashton's Neptune. They think creatively around each other. Mila misunderstands Ashton, which I feel like makes sense. Like, I'm really not surprised. Like, their differences do seem to be a key part of the relationship. They both need to be clearer with communication. I think this would just be with arguments, honestly. Mila sees Ashton as abstract. Yeah, she seems to kind of view him as someone with a real lack of agency, just a real lack of drive. Ashton sees Mila as practical and logical. Again, the whole thing with Mila being practical is repeated. Mila's trust for Ashton fades. I swear we saw this in the beginning as well. That's not great. Ashton feels misunderstood by Mila and Ashton feels limited by Mila. I hate the dynamic they have. I really don't like it. It's just so awkward, I feel like. It's like, it is kind of toxic because it's not even specifically unhealthy. It's more of just like, it's just very awkward and it's just odd that they're attracted to this. Like, it's a bit... So now it's time for Venus. We have Ashton's Venus in Aquarius and Mila's Venus in Virgo. Enjoy meaningful conversations together. They want to talk about different things. What a surprise. I feel like these last two notes, so true to their relationship. They enjoy, like, you know, having conversations together, enjoy the quality time together, but they want different things. Mila values Ashton's presence and Mila needs to understand Ashton's need for independence. Again, with the conflicting thing with Ashton because he seems to depend on her but also seems to want his space. Ashton's Venus in Mila's second house. Ashton is focused on what he can get out of the relationship. We saw this right at the beginning and I hope that would have been the last time we would have seen that. But no, so what... I'm not really a fan of Ashton in this relationship. Like, what do you mean? Mila is careful to not get emotionally invested in Ashton. I'm honestly not surprised. We haven't seen anything with Ashton having the emotional capacity for Mila. So if I were Mila as well, and I sense this in Ashton, I also would be careful to not get emotionally invested either. Ashton doesn't feel committed to Mila. Great. Mila's Venus in Ashton's fourth house. Mila feels the need to protect herself from Ashton. This is odd because on one hand she's very protective of him, but then also she needs to protect herself as well. Strong magnetism. Mila has a strong attraction to Ashton. Ashton senses Mila's hesitancy. Potentially being nice to Ashton here, potentially. Maybe he also has a sort of like, a complex, a sort of feeling he shouldn't get involved with Mila because we have seen she feels conflicted about Ashton. She has hesitancy. Potentially why Ashton is careful to not be attached and wants that separation from Mila is because of that. Uncertainty and tension characterizes relationship. Yeah, keyword is tension here, guys. Ashton's Venus sextile Mila's Neptune. Ashton is enchanted by Mila, prefer to see each other as a fantasy. This does not need to be here. I don't like this at all. They're tolerant of each other, they share spiritual interests. Ashton may expect too much from Mila. Yeah, I can kind of see that. We haven't explicitly seen anything regarding this. But mostly emotionally wise, like with him not giving Mila the emotional nourishment, but he expects it from Mila. Emotionally so, I do see it. In any other way, not so much, but definitely emotionally so. Mila is easily charmed by Ashton. So I assume because we have kept seeing a lot of Mila's attracted to Ashton, very charmed by Ashton, very attracted to him. That could be a potential element in her conflicting feelings, like very much attracted to him, really likes him, but also Ashton's Venus trine Mila's Pluto. It's emotionally fulfilling. I feel like for Ashton's end, really. Not likely to grow stale. I mean, yeah, but not in the best way. Both enjoy growing from this relationship. I really do hope they do grow a lot from this relationship, and it is an element of the relationship strengthens over the years in a positive way. They want to have children together, which I believe they do, and that is a good element in this reading, I guess. Like, they both have a desire to sort of, you know, be domestic together, like to live together, have children together. I'm glad they both seem to want that. Ashton considers Mila irresistible, and he sees Mila as a soulmate. So, yeah, they both seem to be very much attracted to each other, really like each other. I don't like the whole thing how we saw with they prefer to see each other as a fantasy. Because if their attraction is on a superficial level and like their heads run wild or like daydream a bit, like fantasize about each other. So the whole thing with we've seen how they are very much attracted to each other. There is that physical attraction, that connection, and you know, the whole soulmate thing. They're, you know, Ashton's enchanted by Mila. We've been seeing that. Just connecting that to how they prefer to see each other as a fantasy. I guess it kind of explains why they kind of stay together despite this sort of conflict they do have. Because potentially they do focus on that sort of daydreamy element they have with each other. So now it's time for Mars. We have Ashton's Mars in Cancer and Mila's Mars in Leo, sorry. Ashton is protective of Mila, so I'm glad he feels that way, because in the reading we kept seeing Mila is protective of Ashton. They can become argumentative. What a surprise. Mila makes Ashton anxious, and Ashton will give Mila the admiration she wants, which is nice. I'm glad Mila is getting something out of the relationship. I assume this admiration isn't emotionally so though, just what we've been seeing. Ashton's Mars in Mila's 8th house. Love-hate, I'm not surprised. Mila feels possessive of Ashton. We see again, it's transformative. They will never get over each other. Ashton feels drawn to Mila. Mila feels like a damsel in distress around Ashton, which that is interesting because so far we've been seeing, you know, throughout this reading that Mila is very much the more assertive one. She seems to really hold this relationship. She's the anchor here. Mila feels mesmerized by Ashton, and there's a possibility of a taboo in the relationship. Mila's Mars in Ashton's 3rd house. Mila is more blunt around Ashton. Ashton may intimidate Mila. Ashton is sensitive to Mila's intensity. Their Mars signs are conjunct together, so there's straightforward communication and healthy competitiveness. Identify with each other on a basic level. I really hope so, because there's a lot of differences here. It would be good if they had at least a little common ground. Inspire each other to do their best. They may be physically active together and easy for them to get into conflict, as we have been seeing throughout this reading. Ashton's Mars trine Mila's Jupiter. They feel they can do anything together. Healthy competitiveness, we see again. Mila is okay with Ashton asserting himself. So we did see a couple times throughout this reading Ashton is a bit more dominant. I'm glad that Mila likes this part of him though. That's nice. They have fun together. They enjoy trying new things together. They've shared interest in sports and travel. So I'm glad they do seem to have that sort of common ground, even if it is a bit more superficial, like just having fun together, being active together. Mila helps Ashton get out of his comfort zone. They're a lucky couple. Ashton feels more energized around Mila. Sexual relationship is prioritized and possibly a reckless relationship. Ashton's Mars square Mila's Saturn. Ashton tries to impress Mila. Mila's standards are in conflict with Ashton's effort. That's not great. Mila may try to control Ashton as he thinks he's immature. I hate this because in this reading, at least to me, their relationship very much reminds me of like a parent-child dynamic. And this just makes it so much worse because we have been seeing she's very possessive of him, very overbearing of him. And if that is because she thinks he's a bit mature, Ashton's Mars square Mila's Pluto. There's power struggles, their external influences challenge them. Ashton's blunt nature triggers Mila's inner issues. Dig into each other's psyche, there's a brutal transformation. Need to deal with their own issues instead of fighting each other. So this I assume would go back to the very beginning. We saw their arguments are very much related to their ego. So I assume this would be related to that, where, you know, the conflict, it ultimately does stem from the individual selves and their ego. So that was the final aspect. I hope you guys enjoyed that reading. If you did, give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more videos from me. Click the notification bell so you can get notified when I upload. And yeah, I think that's all for me today. I will see you guys next time. Bye.